Super Bowl champions, Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Eagle Eye with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Roob, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a little humid here. I have the windows open, and I feel like I'm just going to start sweating at any moment.
Yeah, I kind of like the humidity. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird.
I'm thinking about biting the bullet and turning on the AC, but I can't do it yet. It's too early. It's not June.
Ben and I were just talking about that before you signed in, and we both have been cranking our AC all day. So
yeah, I'm holding out, and I'm regretting it right now as I'm sitting here like feeling humid and sticky. But that's a sign that we're getting closer to summer and closer to hopefully football returning. We have a full schedule today. Not a lot going on, but we have a bunch of stuff to talk about. I put out a ranking of the top starting quarterbacks in the NFL. We're going to take a look at where I put Carson Wentz and whether or not you agree with his placement. The NFL still really determined to be the no fun league. They don't approve a proposal that I thought made a lot of sense. You took a look at young Eagles. In the grand scheme of things, they don't really have a lot of great young players. You ranked their top 10 under the age of 25. You also did a pretty cool list, the best Eagles to never make a Pro Bowl. That's like a full team, so position by position. And then we're going to continue the look at better or worse. We're going to go to receiver today. So certainly a lot to talk about there. I wanted to start with Carson Wentz's ranking. I took a long time to do this, and I just looked at the 32 starting quarterbacks in the league right now. So it doesn't include guys like Cam Newton who aren't on a team. It doesn't include I went with Mitchell Trubisky for Chicago. If Nick Foles is the quarterback, it would change a little bit. So it's an imperfect science, but you still get a good sense of where I think.
So you had to go with Foles because everyone's going to want to know where's Nick ranked. Like how do you rank Nick? It's not an easy thing.
It's impossible. So I did make it a little easy on myself by sticking with Trubisky. But honestly, I don't think it really would have changed much. Nick's hard to figure out, but he would have been a little higher than Trubisky, but not significant. He wouldn't have been like a top 15 quarterback. And I have Wentz as a top 15 quarterback. I have him as a top 10 quarterback. How do you want to do this? You want to just go through my top 10?
Yeah, you want to start with that? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, let's just start. Excuse me, with number. I was thirsty. It's hot in here. If I pass out during this podcast, just keep going on without me. Next man up, okay?
I hope we do.
Thanks. All right, we'll start off with number one. To me, the ultimate no-brainer right now, it's Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know if there are – I mean, I guess you can make a case for other guys, but I don't think you could ever sell me on another guy right now not named Patrick Mahomes taking that top spot.
Yeah, no argument from me. He's I mean, I said this the first time I saw him play. I think that guy's going to get Andy Reid in the Hall of Fame. I think he's already done that.
And he's probably going to get himself in the Hall of Fame. I mean, yeah,
I think he might have already done that too. He is fun to watch. He's a different kind of guy. And
he is.
Yeah.
And, you know, he had the magical year 2 years ago. And then last year, the numbers were down, but he played really well. And he played well when they needed him to. And he can do things on a football field, not just that other people can't do, but things that I've never seen anyone else even attempt to do. He's a special kind of player, but he does. I mean, when we get to Carson Wentz, there are certain traits that they share. And there are only a few guys in the world who share those kind of traits, the mobility, arm strength, all of that. And Mahomes is at the top of the list.
Yeah, and you got to give kudos to Brett Veach, who came up. He started with the Eagles as an intern, worked his way up under Howie, goes to Kansas City with Andy, becomes general manager, the youngest GM in the league, and is the first guy to really identify Pat Mahomes as a potential franchise quarterback. And they just did everything they could to get him. And Brett Veach certainly had a huge role in that.
You remember how big of a surprise it was that draft day?
Yeah.
They moved up to get him. It was a bold move up. They were pretty far down. It obviously worked out. They have the best quarterback in the league. Number two is where we're going to start to run into some controversy. I have number two, Russell Wilson. over Lamar Jackson. Now, if we're just going off of last year, I'd be crazy for doing that. Lamar had an insane year. The reason I have Russell ahead of him right now is just the consistency over a period of time. And that's nothing against Lamar Jackson. He hasn't had the opportunity to do it. But Russell Wilson, to me, is a no doubt about it Hall of Famer still in his prime, which is why I have him above Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a defensive coordinator right now, I'd rather prepare for Russell Wilson at this stage of his career than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, the guy had 36 touchdowns and 1,200 rushing yards. Right now, I think it's easier to beat Russell Wilson than Lamar Jackson. So from that standpoint, now if you're going lifetime body of work, but if you're doing that, then Tom Brady's got to be number one. So it's all about how you define it. But I'd probably put Lamar Jackson ahead of Russell Wilson.
And you can make that case. My thing is I know what I'm getting from Russell Wilson next year. We have 1 year of Lamar Jackson. And part of the reason as a defensive coordinator you'd rather go against Russ right now is because you have all this tape on him. I want to see how defenses start to counteract Lamar. I don't know if it's possible. He's such a dynamic player, and he's third on the list. It's not like he's 12th. He's the third best quarterback in the league. So I think those top three, maybe the order of 2 and 3 are debatable, but to me, those top three are cemented right now. Fair enough?
You can make a case for Drew Brees in that top three. I think
you're taken out.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You could put Drew Brees ahead of Russell Wilson right now. You could make that case. They've each won one Super Bowl. I think Drew, obviously, Drew, the last month of last year, he was as good as anybody in the league. I would probably have it how you have it, but I think you can make a case for Drew Brees up in that top three.
Sure, and that's where we're going.
Mahomes. You could go Mahomes, Brees, Jackson, Wilson, or Mahomes, Jackson, Brees, Wilson, and I don't think anybody's going to sue you.
That's fair. So 4 and 5 are the two Hall of Famers that are kind of getting a little long in the tooth. Drew Brees at 4, Aaron Rodgers at 5. You're right. Drew Brees the last month of the 2019 season, 15 touchdowns, no picks, 1,100 yards.
Yeah.
Insane in those last 4 games.
At 40 years old.
Yeah. So at some point he's going to retire or he's going to slow down, and it's not going to be Drew Brees, but he's still Drew Brees right now. Aaron Rodgers, I have firmly behind him right now. And that's kind of an admission for me because I love Aaron Rodgers. When we talk about the special things that, Pat Mahomes does, you put Aaron Rodgers in that category too, with the size, speed, arm strength. Aaron Rodgers at 5, which means the Eagles face 4 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league this year.
Yeah, I would probably put Deshaun Watson ahead of Aaron Rodgers at this point. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is what he used to be, still really good. I really like Deshaun Watson a lot. I just think he's so dangerous, and obviously maybe he goes down because DeAndre Hopkins isn't there. He's not as good anymore. Yeah. We'll see. But at this point, I'd probably put him ahead of Aaron Rodgers.
You can make that case. And I have Watson at 6. He's been really good. And he's been more consistent than Carson Wentz. He's been more consistent than a lot of these players on this list. It certainly helped him to have DeAndre Hopkins, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when he doesn't. It's nice having the best receiver in the league on your team and with the best hands in the league on your team. So that'll be interesting to see. And then at number 7, I have Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I think he's about where he should be. My gut feeling when I talk about it is usually he's in an 8 to 10 range, but then you look at the other quarterbacks and there's who are you going to put ahead of him?
There are guys you can make a case for. So let me round out the next few players on this list.
Yeah.
8, Matt Stafford, 9, Ryan Tannehill, 10, Tom Brady, 11, Kirk Cousins, 12, Dak Prescott, 13, Matt Ryan.
Yeah. And at risk of pissing off the entire Philadelphia Eagles fan base, I think you have Dak Prescott too low personally.
Okay.
I think he's pretty good. I think he's a top 10 quarterback. Brady, Brady wasn't awful last year. I mean, you could see the decline. You could see it was happening. Making him number 10, I'd probably have him ahead of like a Tannehill and probably even Stafford at this point. I'd have Dak in the top 10. I'd probably drop Tannehill and Stafford a little bit.
That'd be
Stafford
fair.
puts up great numbers. He always has put up great numbers.
He's put up great numbers for pretty bad teams at times.
He has, but he's had good receivers, unlike Carson, who's been on good teams, but without good receivers. And that's the whole thing about evaluating Carson is the numbers he puts up without any wide receivers are incredible. And I think you got to take that into account. I mean, Dak's out there with Amari Cooper. Now he's got CeeDee Lamb. Matt Stafford's always had good receivers. Brady hasn't. That's what really sets him apart. Here and there he has. But I think Dak should be probably in the top 10. I would definitely have Carson ahead of Dak. But Dak's pretty good.
He's good. The way I evaluate quarterbacks is their ability, and I'll say this. I mean, Carson needs to be more consistent, but I think that consistency will come if he gets better players around him. I'm still really high on Carson Wentz, and I really don't think it's because I'm too close to the situation. I think it's because of the plays that he can make. We're talking about a handful of guys in the world can make them. I mean, it's him, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson. I mean, Dak can't make the plays Carson Wentz does. He doesn't have the arm strength. He has the mobility. Question. He doesn't have the arm strength. And Carson's got to put it all together. He's got to stay healthy. And I know that we're talking about a guy it's not like he's a spring chicken anymore. He should be in the prime of his career, and maybe he is. But when you look at all the attributes he has, he's really good. And I think if he gets some better wide receivers around him, he'll finally live up to that full potential.
Who's the highest ranking guy in this list who will never go into the Hall of Fame?
Tannehill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think Carson, Stafford, and Deshaun Watson are all Hall of Famers?
Well, they have a chance.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking? Oh, the highest guy on this list who won't make the Hall of Fame?
Who won't make it? Who will never be a Hall of Famer?
Well, you can argue Lamar won't because he's only in the league a couple years. And with his style of play, you never know. I mean, I know that makes people nervous. It probably makes the Ravens a little nervous that a guy like that takes one hit and all of a sudden he's no longer the player he was. So that would probably scare any team, right? If they had a quarterback like that who's one hit away from changing their game.
Yeah.
Stafford probably won't get in, but he'll put up the numbers to get in.
Yeah.
Tannehill obviously won't. Kirk Cousins won't. Prescott has a chance, theoretically. He's still young enough. I think that Brady guy will be okay.
Yeah, he'll probably get in.
Yeah. Matt Ryan has a chance. He has that MVP under his belt.
Yeah.
After Matt Ryan, it really starts to drop off. You have Jimmy Garoppolo.
Well, Roethlisberger will get in.
Yeah, Roethlisberger will get in. I put him so low because he's 38 and coming off that elbow injury, and I just don't know what to expect from him. He was a really tough one to place on this list. He was one of the tougher ones.
Phil Rivers is kind of in that same category. In a way, you have number 20, which is kind of low, but he wasn't great last year. He's changed teams. I think he'll end up being a Hall of Famer at some point.
How about this game? How about the after Phillip Rivers? So from 21 through 32, if you had to pick one of those players to end up in the Hall of Fame, who would you pick?
Jarrett Stidham, probably, just because of who he's playing for. No, that's a great question. Going from all the guys below Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, so I have Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Gardner Minshew, Tyrod Taylor, Mitchell Trubisky, Dwayne Haskins, and Jarrett Stidham. Is it Stidham?
I'd probably say Burrow, just because. I mean, he's got the resume up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you could kind of rule out most of the other guys. So almost by default,
really can. I mean, Baker Mayfield's still young enough.
No, he's not.
I know he's still. I'm just saying he's young enough, first round pick.
He's not. He's not even going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I think
plays across the street from it.
I think Sam Darnold of these players might have the best immediate shot to be a good quarterback. Like a top, like I think he has the most potential of this group to shoot up the list and be like a top 10 quarterback.
All right, let's say that he gets in. Which of these top 10 is most likely to not be on this list next year? I guess Tannehill's the obvious answer.
Yeah,
Brady.
He's pretty obvious. I mean, but Stafford.
Yeah, but Stafford's going to put up good numbers. I can see Brady. I don't have a good feeling about that whole thing in Tampa. I don't think it's going to go real well.
I'm kind of with you on that, and it feels blasphemous to say it. And another one, I have Kyler Murray at 17, maybe a little high for him, but I really like Kyler Murray. And seeing what Lamar, I don't want to compare him to Lamar Jackson, that'd be unfair. But seeing what Lamar was able to do from year 1 to year 2, I'm really excited to see Kyler Murray year 1 to year 2.
Kyler Murray ahead of Lamar Jackson after his rookie year?
Oh, for sure. I mean, He played more, but
yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah. So do you agree with my general area for Carson Wentz in that 7 to 10 range?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think clearly maybe a little on the upper end of it, but I'd probably have him 7 or 8, honestly, if I did it.
Yeah. I mean, the guys, who would you argue should be ahead of him?
Well, I mean, a lot of
Brady.
What's that?
You could argue Brady. You could argue Dak.
You can argue Brady and Dak. I think those are the guys you can make a case for. And a lot of that is just kind of defining your terms. There's nobody else. I mean, Stafford's put up big numbers for a lot of years, but you can't put Stafford ahead of Carson Wentz unless you're doing this podcast in Michigan or something. I don't think anybody would do that. Yeah.
I know you love Detroit, though.
I was thinking of maybe doing a list of the top 32 quarterbacks at this time next year, kind of like projecting what that list will look like a year from now.
Oh, I like that.
Maybe I'll do that.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Let me know how many page views you got on this, and I'll decide if I'm going to do it or not.
If it's worth your while.
Exactly.
All right. Are we good on this? Should we move on?
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's fun to rank. And I know some people gave me crap like, well, it was slow news day. Well, yeah, because there aren't OTAs, and I'm trying to have fun here. And enjoy it or don't, or enjoy it or go yell at a cloud. Some news in the NFL.
Slow news year.
Yeah, really. Some news from the NFL. The rule proposals that they would have gone over at the owners' meetings. Of course, there are no owners' meetings this year, so they did them virtually. The most exciting one in there actually came from the Eagles. It was a proposal to have an onside kick alternative, which would basically be a 4th and 15, an untimed down from your own 25-yard line. A team could use it twice per game in regulation, so you couldn't use it in overtime. And this didn't even get up for a vote today on Thursday. It was tabled for a later discussion, which is a shame to me. I really like this rule. I think it's a fun idea. And there's no reason not to pass this for a year trial in my mind. Like, the onside kick is such an antiquated idea. Like, you're going to put games on the way a football bounces. To me, it's always been kind of strange. And this was a cool alternative to me. What do you think about it?
I wasn't totally sold on it. I'd have to crunch the numbers. Onside kicks have become almost impossible to convert. But I think they should be. I mean, it's certainly an exciting play when they are converted. I remember
There's so much luck involved in it.
Yeah, there is. I kind of thought, I mean, fourth and 15 or just 15 yards to go is, I don't know if I guess that's a higher percentage play.
It is, but
I just thought it might be a little too high percentage.
Okay. I mean, it is a higher percentage play, but the caveat on that is that, not when you're in a 4th and 15 or even a 3rd and 15, you're not necessarily trying to get the first down. So the numbers are kind of off. Like, you can look at the numbers and say the offense does this percent of time, the defense does this percent of the time, but sometimes the goal in a 4th and 15 is not to get the first down.
Just to get yards to get closer for a field goal.
Exactly. Or on a third down. Yeah. So with that in mind, you can look at the numbers, and the numbers for the Eagles on offense are not as good as you might expect, but I still think this rule would help them because they have the most aggressive head coach in the league, and they have a quarterback with the ability to extend plays, which to me are two of the things that give you the best chance to succeed in a must-have 4th and 15 scenario, right? You have a coach who's first off willing to go for it, right? He's going to say, this could be an advantage. If the numbers tell me to go for it, I'm going to do it. Then they have a quarterback who can roll in and out of the pocket, who can buy time in the pocket. So that gives his receivers time to get open. So if the first read isn't there, second read isn't there, and the play breaks down, you still have a chance to convert. Whereas if you have a statue in the pocket and your first reads aren't there, the play is kind of sunk.
I think my biggest issue with it comes down to officiating, where the way these people, the inconsistency that they call, DPI or anything that's going to give the team a first down there. You could have something defended really well, and all of a sudden they call a flag on it, and the other team gets the ball back. I think that's my biggest issue with it, just the inconsistencies in the officiating.
So if you're a team and you say, we're going to go for this, and then there's a defensive hold and you get a first down, well, that's not fair. I get that. But honestly, so whenever these rule changes come up, I'm always asked, like, what rule would you change? And for me, I've never differed on this. I hate the idea that a defensive hold is an automatic first down. It makes no sense to me. I think it should be a 5-yard penalty, fine, replay the down. If it's a 4th and 15, or heck, it could be a 4th and 50. If there's the defensive hold a yard from the line of scrimmage, it's a first down.
Yeah.
That has never made sense to me. And that's the first rule I'll change when I become czar of football.
The one that bugs me, and it's along the same lines, is the pass interference rule that, it's a spot of the infraction. You chuck the ball up to Sheldon Gibson, 50 yards down the field, and there may be contact, maybe not contact. The next thing you know, you get a 50-yard play. I don't know. I don't know if they can have grades of it, because if you make it a 15-yard penalty, you can just tackle a guy 60 yards down the field before he has a chance to catch it. It's a 15-yard penalty. So I see.
Yeah, you have to kind of weigh.
Yeah. I don't know. And then you get into there's like there's the ticky-tack pass interference and the 50, and the spot of the foul. They have different grades of it, and that gets into too much, roughing the passer versus roughing the kicker and running into the kicker. But anyway, I think
eventually this onside kick alternative is going to be a rule.
There'll be
at least
something
on a trial basis.
Yeah,
which is what they'll do. They do that for a lot of these rules. They'll put them in on a 1-year trial, and then the next spring they'll bring it back up, whether or not they want to make it permanent or not.
I'd like to see him put it in for preseason, see how it goes.
That'd be fun. But no team. They'd play with it, but no team's gonna need to win in preseason.
Yeah, but nobody needs to see a kicker kick extra points in the preseason either. It's the stupidest thing. I'd go for it every time in the preseason.
I guess you're right. Unless you have a kicking competition.
Yeah, but even so, I don't think there's any connection between whether a guy makes a PAT in a preseason game and what kind of kicker he's going to become.
That's fair. A few rules did pass.
Yeah.
One of the Eagles' proposals did. It basically made permanent the replay of scoring plays and turnovers negated by a foul. So basically, think back to that Dallas Goedert offensive pass interference. That's what you can remember when they called that and his touchdown got overruled. That rule went into effect last year, and I had some people ask me, that was a trial basis. So now that's permanent, which I thought was an easy no-brainer. And then the important bylaw change, you can now bring 3 players back from IR per season. That has been upped from 2. That's probably a precursor to the 17-game season. That'll help when you have an extra game.
I liked when they used to have, the 4-week IR. Just going IR for 4 weeks. I don't know why they limit it. I don't, if a guy's healthy, It should never be a strategic decision whether to IR somebody and end their season, or, we want to save this recall for later or something. If a guy's healthy, he should play.
Yeah, I guess they're worried about teams stashing guys and kind of using that as extra roster spots.
And that's why they got rid of it. That's why they made it.
And teams would do that.
Season-long thing. And teams did use it. So what? I remember when there was a guy that the Eagles were stashing on IR. I forget who it was, but I remember after they placed him on IR, we went into the locker room and we saw him. He was sitting in his locker. He's like, "You okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. They're just stashing me."
Yeah, teams do it all. The Eagles did it a few years ago with Josh Sweat. He had an ankle injury that was fine in like 3 weeks, but you can IR him, and he was hurt. It was just not a season-ending injury. They wanted him to get stronger. So teams do it all the time. It's it's technically not within the spirit of the rules, but if everyone does it, league kind of turns a blind eye.
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, I don't care. Moving on. Tier list of young Eagles. This was there was a list compiled. Who did the original list?
It was on NFL.com.
NFL.com.
I don't know who wrote it. I apologize. I probably wouldn't say his name anyway because he's in a competition, Dave. I don't want to promote him. But no, it was a cool list. And it really kind of brought into focus just how many teams have these like really elite players. You mentioned Pat Mahomes. Chris Godwin, what a year he had for Tampa, like almost, over 1,300 yards last year. O-linemen like Orlando Brown and Quentin Nelson, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Marshawn Lattimore, the guy that picked off the Nick Foles pass a couple years ago in New Orleans, Marlon Humphrey, some of these D-backs, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Jamal Adams. There's 25 guys on the team, the best. And what they did was they defined it by guys who turned 25 after opening day of this coming season, which is projected as September 13. So I started thinking, like, obviously there were no Eagles on the list. There's no Eagles close to being, that's just the reality. So I started thinking, like, how hard would it be to make a list of the top 10 Eagles under 25? And there's some guys like Greg Ward turns 25 in July, people like that. I didn't include. I went with 24 or under on opening day of this coming season. And the list starts off okay. You got Miles Sanders is number one. I think he's clear number one. There's nobody else you can make a case for. And by the way, guys like Dallas Goedert, Cravon LeBlanc, Hassan Ridgeway, they're already 25. Greg Ward, Rasul, Joe Osman, he's in the list of top 10 guys working in the bakery who's 25 or under. But they all turn 25 before the season starts. So Miles is number one. The first four are kind of in a separate category. Derek Barnett's number two. I think he
was really young. He has a lot of experience for a guy who's not 25 yet.
Yeah, he doesn't turn 25 till next summer.
He was really young when the Eagles drafted him.
Yeah, so that gives you a little more hope. But he's been. I think he's had a disappointing start to his career. So okay. I went Miles.
I'd even go. He's been fair to good.
Yeah, I know we disagree on Derek Barnett. That's all right, but we can devote a whole show to that. But I went Avante third, and he's another another young guy. He's only 23. Dillard, I went Dillard fourth just because, who else? Kind of by default, those four guys are starter caliber guys.
And Andre Dillard is older than Derek Barnett.
Yeah, he is.
Which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, you're right. A guy who's going into a second year versus a guy going to his fourth year. But I went with those four to start it off. And then it gets a little tricky because I went Josh Sweat next just because he had 4 sacks last year.
And he's the third defensive end. He played quite a bit last year.
Played 350 snaps. TJ Edwards was sixth.
Has a chance to be a good player this year.
Has a chance to be a good player. Was playing a little bit by the end of the season. I went Sidney Jones seventh just because who else? Who else are you going to put in there? At least he's made a couple plays that have helped them win games. And then it got a little tricky. You know, I finished with Anthony Rush, Craig James, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. But I think, you know, am I forgetting anybody? Am I leaving anybody out?
I don't know. Well,
you want to put,
we should mention we didn't include rookies here.
What do you mean we?
You didn't include rookies. Yeah, you know what? You did this all on your own. So if someone hates it, email Roob, not me.
No, we did not include rookies. I was going to put Jalen Reagor on there, and I was like, you know what? Let's just be consistent. Because last year,
he'd be on there.
Yeah, he would be. Last year, if I did this list, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside would be a lot higher because he hadn't played yet. Mm-hmm. So I thought, let's just leave it to guys who have been in the league. But I
don't know. You have, I might have put JJ higher than Anthony Rush and Craig James.
Well, Craig James was, played a lot on special teams. You can make a case for moving JJ up, but to me, he had a really disappointing season.
I won't argue with you there.
Anthony Rush was in the rotation the last, 6 weeks of the season.
I mean, he's not going to make the team probably.
He probably won't. But this is this year's list. So
I know, I'm just saying, like, it's kind of crazy when you think about the lack of young depth. I mean, he's the eighth. You have him as the eighth best player under 25, and he's not going to make the team. And Craig James probably won't make the team. I mean, he has a chance, but
now
it's not a lock.
What does it mean? I don't want to get carried away with it. Obviously, they have a lot of young players that we haven't seen. Jalen Hurts play. There's a lot of these guys. There might be guys, undrafted guys, late round guys. Maybe Hightower comes in and plays well. Who knows? But right now, when you look at the list of young players compared to league wide, and last year, do you know there were 30 guys 24 and younger that made a Pro Bowl last year alone? Now everybody makes the Pro Bowl now, but none of them are Eagles. And the last time the Eagles had somebody under 25 make a Pro Bowl was Cody Parkey in 2014. And the last position player was Nick Foles in 2013. And 5 teams ago for him. And the last defensive player, you got to go back to Michael Lewis and Lito Shepherd in 2004. So, it puts a lot of pressure on the older guys, the more expensive guys to produce, which is, can be shaky, and to stay healthy, which can be shaky.
Yeah. And we've talked so much about the top heavy nature of the contract situation here in Philadelphia and the reliance on older players, which, that's why they wanted as many draft picks as they had this year. And they want that next year too, because they realize the way to build a team when you have a quarterback making, and we've talked about this a ton, but when you have a quarterback making as much as they have right now in Carson Wentz, you're supposed to supplement that with young and inexpensive talent. That young and inexpensive part, they go together. So the idea is you have guys like, Jamal Adams on their rookie deals becoming Pro Bowl type players. And then you figure out ways to pay the guys who work out later on. But that's the problem here, is that young guys are cheap guys, and you need those young cheap guys, especially with the way this roster is built.
Hey, your NBC Sports Philadelphia podcasts are now on the My Teams app. Listen to Eagle Eye, Sixers Talk, Phillies Talk, and Flyers Talk now. Great new way to listen to all our podcasts.
We talked about the Eagles we always talk about Pro Bowls, right? And it's kind of an imperfect way to gauge whether or not someone's good, because over the years, just more guys make Pro Bowls than in past, because a lot of guys don't want to go. They have a little nagging injury. They decide, I don't want to be on this team, but we still use it. And we use it to gauge a player's greatness at the end of their career. And teams use it to gauge how much they pay players. There are escalators in contracts. So you did something interesting recently. You went back and looked at the best Eagles who never made a Pro Bowl, and you put together an entire team. I guess we don't have to go through every single player, but let's just go through the offense at first. The quarterback was a tough one to find, wasn't it?
Yeah, and all the successful quarterbacks in Eagles history have made a Pro Bowl, either here or somewhere else. Whether it's Vic, Randall, Nick Foles, Donovan, Jaws, Carson. The winningest quarterback in Eagles history to never make a Pro Bowl is Rodney Peete. So I went with Rodney. He won a playoff game. He was 15-9 as an Eagle. Won a playoff game in 95, the 59-37 or 38 game against the Lions at the Vet. Somebody actually tweeted to me and said I was being disrespectful to Sam Bradford. I was like, I'm not putting Sam Bradford on this team. I can just go through the positions here. Some were no-brainers like Deuce. I mean, Deuce had almost 5,000 yards. He's the only non-Pro Bowler in Eagles history to have a 1,000-yard season, and he had 3 of them. So he certainly deserves that. Wide receiver was interesting. Jeremy Maclin is listed as never having made a Pro Bowl, but he was picked as an alternate. He was hurt and he didn't go, but I consider him a Pro Bowler. I went Ben Hawkins, almost 5,000 yards in his career. I got Jason Avant in the slot. Jordan Matthews is in there too. It's just they haven't had great receivers, and the ones they've had have made a Pro Bowl. The tight end's a no-brainer. Brent Selleck, 5,000 yards in his career. Next most is John Spagnuolo, who had just about 3,000. So he was way back. The O-line was interesting. O tackles, I went Harrimans and Vic Sears. I don't know if you remember Vic Sears, Dave. He played in the 50s. Harriman's, I used him. He could go guard or tackle, but I needed him at tackle. With Vic Sears. My guards,
which is perfect for all these teams when we're like, I'll just put Harriman's at tackle, which is basically what Big Red did with him for his entire career.
Just put him where you need him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get the 5 best guys. Ron Baker is one of my guards. Bake was here through the entire 80s, I think 80 to 88. I remember once Ron Baker showed up at minicamp and retired at minicamp the first day. And it was like a depth chart they handed out to the media, and Ron Baker was 4th team on the depth chart. And he said, I've been around long enough to know there is no 4th team. so
he retired right then?
He retired on the spot.
That's incredible.
He was a good, solid player. And I went Wiz as the other guard. He was only here a couple of years, but when you look at what he did in that Super Bowl season in 17, I went with Wiz. Plus, they just haven't had good guards. I mean, the only good guards they've had, whether it's Evan Mathis, Sean Andrews, Jermaine Mayberry went to a Pro Bowl one year. Obviously, Brandon Brooks. Sam Molly you can make a case for, but I went with Wiz. And finishing off the offense was Guy Morris. Played 173 games as an Eagle. Just a solid starter. Played on the 80 Super Bowl team. Big Vermeil guy was here throughout Vermeil's career. So that's the offense. Now, defense, some of these are some of my favorite guys. Andy Harmon should have gone to a Pro Bowl, had 40 sacks in his 7 years here. 1 year, he had 10.5 sacks as an interior lineman and didn't go to the Pro Bowl. Really good against the run. Really good, solid player, late-round draft pick from Kent State. And Mike Patterson, another guy, just really solid, never had a lot of sacks. Just a run stuffer, 2-gapper. Kenny Clark's one guy. I really wish I could have put him on the team, but there just wasn't. I just ran out of roster space. Defensive ends. Greg Brown once had 16 sacks in a season and did not make a Pro Bowl. Wow. It's actually the 4th most in NFL history by a non-Pro Bowler. And then he had another season where he had 13 sacks and didn't make the Pro Bowl. So he's got one spot, and he started his career before sacks were an official stat. So he could have had 70 in his career. He ended up having 50.5 officially. And BG, BG, 50.5 sacks, 51.5 sacks, 4th most among active non-Pro Bowlers. And so he's got a spot on there too. There's been a couple of years where I thought he had a shot. You'd like to see him get his, get one before he's done. By outside backers, John Bunning, he's a lock. Played 11 years here, was on the 80 Super Bowl team, really solid player. It was Carlos Emmons versus Michael Kendricks for the 2nd spot at outside linebacker.
That's tough.
Yeah, I went with Emmons. Kendricks was a little flashier player, made more picks, more sacks. But Carlos Emmons was a great cover linebacker, really solid, good against the run. And he was kind of part of that early Jim Johnson, when Jim was just kind of establishing that defense. He was a really formative guy in that team. So I went with Bunning and Carlos Emmons. Inside linebacker, no-brainer, Byron Evans, B&E. had all those great players around him, but he was really, really solid. And all those guys, Seth, Clyde, they'll all tell you that Byron Evans was as important to that defense as any of them. Safety was the hardest position because there's like 5 guys, Nate Ramsey, Bree Wilson, Andre Waters. There's so many guys who were good candidates. Joe Scarpati had like 40 interceptions, rather like 29, but like 40. But I went with Randy Logan and Don Burrows. Randy Logan played more games in an Eagles uniform than any non-Pro Bowler. 23 interceptions. Don Burrows had 50 interceptions in his career, Dave, and never made a Pro Bowl. 29 of them with the Eagles. His first 3 years with the Eagles, 60 to 62, he had 9, 7, and 7 interceptions. He had 23 interceptions the first 3 years in an Eagles uniform. And he's one of only 7 players in NFL history with 3 straight seasons with 7 or more interceptions, not going to a Pro Bowl in any of those 3 years. So I actually looked that up. And then,
I'm sure you did. Yeah.
I actually knew it. I knew it before. I didn't have to look it up. Corner, Sheldon Brown and Herm Edwards.
No Leotis?
Leotis McKelvin did not make it. Herm Edwards, 33 interceptions. Sheldon had 19, the most in Eagles history by non-Pro Bowlers. Nobody else is really in the mix there. Jake Elliott, Donnie Jones are my kickers and punters. Al Nelson and Larry Marshall, the returners. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing to be on this team. I think I know they have like the Hall of Very Good. It's interesting to me to look up like the players in NFL history with the most catches who never made a Pro Bowl. And with Pro Football Reference, you can do it easily. You just go, you sort by career catches and then click 0 Pro Bowls and Shazam.
I mean, most players in the league end up in this middle ground where they never rise to the level of being a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro, but they're good players. And you need guys like that. Like the prototypical one of the Eagles right now is obviously BG, but like a Rodney McLeod.
Yeah.
Going to play in the league 10 years, probably never make a Pro Bowl, but he's a good, solid player, and you need players like that.
I could do a story on the 10 most obscure Pro Bowlers in Eagles history. There's some guys.
I'm sure you will.
I just might.
Our better or worse today is focusing on receiver. Certainly the biggest topic of discussion all offseason has been this position. So the returning players, Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey in some capacity, Greg Ward, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Deontay Barnett, Rob Davis.
David's Burnett.
What did I say?
Barnett.
Oh, Burnett, sorry.
No
they
respect.
lose Nelson Aguilar, and they add Marquise Goodwin, Jalen Reagor, John Hightower, Quez Watkins. Which way are you going on this?
You could have asked me the day after the season ended, and I said better. Just knowing that, they're going to make significant fundamental changes at the position, which they had to do. How much better is the big question, but
exactly
they have no choice but to be better. I would guess Deshaun's going to play more than one game.
You would hope. Yeah.
I would guess that, and I don't want to sit here and turn every podcast into a jump on, Nelly's case, but I think moving on from Nelly was something that they had to do for him and that they had to do for themselves. And
from a talent perspective, we know Nelson is talented at some level, but you weren't getting anything out of that talent. So it's not really a loss.
Yeah. So I think the key is Deshaun staying healthy, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside making some kind of step from year 1 to year 2, and what they get out of Jalen Reagor.
Yeah. Anything from Goodwin or the 2 later round picks, and even Alshon Jeffrey, anything from those 4 is kind of gravy when you're looking at better or worse, but they need at least a couple of those guys to do something for them to be significantly better at this position.
Who do you think out of all those guys you mentioned, who's going to have the most catches and yards this coming season out of all their wide receivers?
Oh, out of all their wide receivers?
Yeah.
Catches and yards?
Well, 2 separate questions because I think they'll be different people.
Yeah. I'd say Deshaun for yards and catches. Yeah, Jalen Reagor.
Don't ever make that sound again.
Yeah, I was leaning Greg Ward, but I'm going Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, I'm going to go Greg Ward and Deshaun. I think Greg Ward's going to catch a lot of passes. He's got those hands, knows how to get open. I think he's a pretty solid slot guy.
And it's important we mentioned we're talking about the receivers here because they have a couple good tight ends and a running back.
And a running back, yeah. But as far as wide receivers, I think Greg Ward will catch 60, 65 balls. And
I mean, if there's speed outside, he's going to have opportunity, you would think, in that slot position.
And I think Carson really likes throwing to him. You could see that right from the get-go. They got a real good. I mean, they've been together. He's been here for 3 years, for most of 3 years.
My thought with Reagor was if they use him on some bubble screens, if they're going forward with it, I mean, those are passes. So I think there's potential for those quick little. They're almost like runs, really, but they go down as passes as long as they're going forward. So I think he has the potential for like 10 of those. So right then, that's a pretty big bump.
Yeah. We'll see. Certainly, the more they can get out of Reagor, the more. I mean, they have to. I mean, he's got to be a player. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think they're significantly better. I think they're better and possibly significantly better.
Fair enough. We're about done here. I did want to mention the governor of Pennsylvania has an order right now. Some of you are probably wondering what that means. The long and short of it is basically that the governor is allowing Philadelphia, most likely next week, to enter into the yellow phase, which would allow pro sports teams to practice. And that's great. And that sounds like a really positive step. And it takes one hurdle away. But in the NFL right now, they're not letting any teams practice until all teams can practice. So it might not end up meaning a whole heck of a lot. What I think it is a good sign of is that there's a good chance there will be training camp in South Philadelphia this summer. I don't know what it means for a possible spring workout. I had a lot of people asking about, can they have a mini camp? I'm still pretty skeptical about that idea, but I think it's at least a good sign about training camp.
And it's really the most fair way to handle it is to wait until all 32 teams are playing by the same rules. You don't want to give anybody an unfair advantage, even though it can be frustrating. Well, we're allowed to do this or this, but we can't because of what's going on in Idaho. Well, there's no teams in Idaho, but in some other state, in whether it's
California.
Washington or New York, California, obviously. So, I mean, I'm getting more optimistic that there'll be some sort of season this fall at some point. I mean, there's some encouraging news about potential vaccines. And I think, the more they learn about this and about what's safe and what's not safe, as testing improves, I think the people that make these decisions will have more and more information to base it on and make the right decisions. So I can't imagine a fall without football, but I'm cautiously optimistic we'll have it.
Same with me. And either way, we'll have more podcasts. If you enjoy Eagle Eye, do us a favor, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Let me ask you one more question. How long could there be no football and us continue doing a podcast twice a week? Like, what if there's no season until like 2023? Would we be able to still?
It might be tough.
I don't want to know the answer to that, but I don't think we'll ever have to worry about that. But
I hope not. For Roob, I'm Dave. We will catch you guys next time.